This is the Landscape Ontario podcast. I am Scott Barber. Today we are talking snow and ice management. This is a extremely important topic right now. In fact, there is a crisis going on with snow contractors, many losing their insurance coverage, or they're seeing their premiums absolutely skyrocket. So first up, we're going to talk to LO's Executive Director, Tony DiGiovanni. He's going to talk about what the association is doing on that front, and also what you can do to help. And then the second part of the episode, we'll be joined with David Lammers. He's the president of Garden Grove Landscaping, based in Waterdown, Ontario. David's a real leader in the sector, and he's going to talk about those challenges as well as some of the opportunities that he sees going forward. So stay tuned. All of that is coming up right now. The Landscape Ontario podcast is sponsored by Dynascape Software. LO members save 15% on Dynascape products, software upgrades, and online training. Visit dynascape.com for details. So Tony, I wanted to talk to you today about some of the things that are going on in the snow and ice sector, some of the things you're hearing from our members at LO. Could you start off, just give us a bit of an overview of what's been going on?
Sure. So about, I'd say about 5 months ago, I started receiving calls from members who could not get insurance. And if they could get insurance, their insurance rates had sometimes doubled or tripled or quadrupled. And on top of that, their deductibles were higher. And they were in a bit of a panic, and these calls kept coming in. So we looked into it and we asked our endorsed insurance broker, Marsh, what's going on. And it turned out that many insurance companies had decided that they did not want to be in the snow and ice business. And so they just basically went to their customers and said, we're not going to insure you. And then the remaining companies, they also didn't want all the risk associated, so they jacked their prices up. Or they forced a lot more stringent risk management processes on the member, and that included making sure they didn't sign bad contracts and that sort of thing. So that's what happened, and it's serious. So at Congress this year, we decided to bring everybody together. I sent one email, and 300 contractors showed up. And that meeting was intense, boy. I mean, there's a lot of the members are in pain because if they don't have insurance, they can't do the work. And in fact, one of the members, he just got up and said, look, I had to lay off 15 guys. Very, very terrible situation.
Very
sad, that's right. And you know how hard working our members are, right? Mm-hmm. And so to lose their livelihood, man. So it's quickly has become a huge issue for us. There's a number of ways that we're dealing with it. And the most important way right now is a political solution. And there's two aspects to this political solution. One is a bill called Bill 118. And Bill 118, its goal is to reduce the statute of limitations from 2 years to 10 days. And that means that if someone does slip and fall, they have 10 days to actually report it.
Right. And
beyond 10 days, then that's a statute of limitation. There are situations where special situations where they can actually report beyond that. But the whole point is to reduce the number of slip and falls that have been increasing a huge amount,
right,
based on all of the ads that you see. Where basically some of these personal injury lawyers are saying, if you fall, just sue. You don't pay unless we collect, right?
Come roll the dice.
That's it. Yeah. And I mean, that's one aspect of
sure,
it.
Sure.
It's more complex than that, but that aspect of it is huge. And I did verify with the insurance companies, the insurance broker, saying, well, has there been a huge increase in slip and falls? And they said, absolutely there has. And that's what's causing the insurance companies to pull out.
Right, at least in slip and fall lawsuits.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows
That's
actual
right.
slip and falls.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's the main, or actually that's a shorter term fix to this thing. And what we did is we sent out sample letters to the members, and we said you need to get political. This bill was put forward by Norm Miller, who had a snow and ice company in his area that convinced him that action was needed. Norm Miller is an MPP from Muskoka. To us, he's a little bit of a hero that he actually took action. The bill has gone through 2 readings. The way it works in government, you have to actually go to 3 readings. So it's passed the 2nd reading. The 3rd reading, it goes to a committee. The committee is usually an all-party committee, and then they take the bill and look at it in real detail, line by line, and then they welcome depositions from all the stakeholders, just to make sure that bill has been looked at from all angles, and then it'll go to a vote, and if it goes to a vote, that's the 3rd reading aspect of it, and then it becomes law, and the process is called gazetting, and it goes into the Gazette, and it's law. So there is a really good chance that if all of our members, and that means you, that I'm talking to, if you go to your local MPP, if you need a sample letter, I can send you a sample letter, but it works way better if you send a letter to your MPP. Better go visit your MPP and just let them know what you're facing.
Right.
And also copy me on the letter, copy the Attorney General, who's Doug Downey, and copy Norm Miller, who authored this bill. And if you need any of that information, just give me a call or email me, tony@landscapeontario.com. Really easy, tony@landscapeontario.com. I'll send you all the information that you need. And together we can do this.
You were saying before, we've actually seen some impact that just reaching out to your members of the provincial legislature can have. Obviously, this whole process with this bill started with a couple companies up in the Muskoka region reaching out to Norm Miller. And you've also mentioned some other companies having success reaching out and actually getting a response and having that connection. So
I mean, just today, one of the members called me, and a cabinet minister visited his place of business because he invited her, and it was a fantastic meeting. He was so excited he had to call me and say this really went well, and here's the report, and he was urging us to just keep the pressure on. Go to your MPPs. Also had an interesting call from the office of an NDP MPP in the London area, because members are putting forth their concerns, and usually MPPs want to listen. I mean, that's their constituency. That's how they get voted in. And so even though it was an NDP MPP, they took the time to call us and find out what the issue was. So I urge everyone, please. It's easy to do.
Super important.
It's super important.
Super important.
So anyway, that's one aspect. That's called 118, Bill 118. If we reduce the statute of limitations from 2 years to 10 days. That's huge from a risk management perspective. And one thing that I will note, Landscape Ontario was actually the initiator behind changing the statute of limitations from 7 years to 2 years.
Right. And how long ago was that?
That was done about 22 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that case, we were backed by an MPP in Durham who just listened to us and ran with it.
Right.
And it was successful. So anyway, that's one aspect, Bill 118.
Yep.
We also are part of another alliance, and this is a little bit different legislative remedy, but it mimics what exists in New Hampshire. So and I'll go back a little bit. We asked our lawyer to look at the U.S. legislative remedies, and because in the U.S. there's a number of states that have bills or legislation that reduces risk and limits liability, or sometimes it's in Illinois, for example, they have a legislation that bans hold harmless clauses, right? To make the contracts a little bit more fair. Anyway, so our lawyer came back and said you should mimic New Hampshire. And the way New Hampshire works is the state developed an accreditation program that represents best practices, and particularly best practices that will reduce salt use.
Okay.
And if those companies take that course and they prove that they're professional and they've done everything they could possibly do based on standards, industry standards, then their liability is limited.
Right.
So what we did in Ontario is we've created an alliance, or we're part of an alliance that includes, and actually was initiated by the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. It includes the World Wildlife Fund, it includes the Building Owners and Managers Association, includes a number of other property managers, and a number of other environmental groups. We are trying to get a similar legislation to New Hampshire here. And what's driving that, though, is an environmental message.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening in the snow and ice business is that there's way too much salt used, and everybody recognizes it, including the members.
Sure.
And it is a cost because a lot of the contracts are salt inclusive,
Right.
but they still use way too much, because they need to prove in their documentation that they've done whatever they could possibly do to keep that area safe, because they're afraid of
Comes
lawsuits.
back full circle to
Yeah. And not only that, the property managers are asking them to put more salt down for the same reason.
they're worried too.
Yeah. So
It's not good for anybody.
That's right. You're now getting saltwater species, fish growing, living in freshwater lakes. I mean, it's not good, not a good thing. So we're the green industry. We certainly want to be environmentally conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another strategy. There are other strategies. This year, we developed a risk management document, which is available, and the risk management document was developed by Marsh, who is our endorsed insurance broker, who are specialists in risk management. And basically, it's a manual of best practices to reduce risk. At that meeting at Congress that I was talking about, one of the members got on the mic and he said, I'm really a risk management company that happens to do snow.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it. But he was right.
Yep.
Right. So whenever there's an issue like this, the easiest way to approach it initially is to look in the mirror. Right. We have control over our own practices,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to do whatever we can to enhance our professionalism, to enhance our knowledge of risk management, to be better at documentation,
Mm-hmm.
to use more technology to understand the specific weather conditions, the temperature of the pavement, and how much salt is being used. And the technology is getting better and better to
Mm-hmm.
track all that stuff. And also, we've been asking our members to not sign contracts that give all the risk or transfer all the risk to them.
Right.
And so we have a standard form contract that we had done probably about 10 years ago, if not more. And our approach to the standard form contract was it needed to be fair to all parties.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't try to transfer risk. We said, you know what, if this is going to work, it needs to be fair to all parties. And so we asked our lawyer to actually develop it that way. And we've encouraged members to use it. Not all can.
Right. That's the hard part, right? Is how how often, in your experience talking to members, are there situations where large property managers basically that's what they're going to demand?
That's right. Especially
It's a tough
especially the
situation.
national or international property management companies. They say that you use our contract or too bad.
They have the leverage in
that's
some
right.
cases. Yeah.
Well, the reality is they think they have leverage.
Right.
The reality is if our members don't do snow, then ultimately they're always liable. Always.
It's true.
It's called the Occupiers Liability Act. They can't transfer their liability. They can try.
Right.
In fact, a lot of the members have said because of the insurance crisis, they basically have told some of their property managers that we can't sign your contract because our insurance company won't allow it.
Right. But we
You know,
can't
which
get
is true.
insurance
We
if
can't
we
get
have that
insurance.
type of
That's
contract.
right.
So hopefully that pendulum is swinging where the property managers will recognize we won't be able to get
That's right.
the service done in a professional way
Yeah.
unless we have a fair contract.
That's right. And I mean, the reality is that it's really a partnership. It's a collaboration,
Yep.
right? It's you can't just transfer responsibility to other parties either way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So what else is going on? That's a couple of the big things. Anything else that members should be thinking about or understanding about this issue? It is pretty complex. I think we probably touched a lot of the bases.
Yeah, I mean the right now it's just important to be politically active.
Right.
And I mean, just to summarize, go visit about Bill 118, and also when the time is right, back this new legislation that we're pushing,
Right.
which we're calling it the New Hampshire model. But really, what it is kind of like a accredited smart about SALT type of legislation with liability protection.
And the truth is, as you see, members have, the professionalism in the snow sector is gone so far.
Oh, it's huge.
Members are so good at what they do.
That's right.
And they are professionals. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a way to recognize that and
I come from the green side, so I'm a horticulturist, and because a lot of our members do snow, I've learned a lot about snow and ice and the technology behind it. I didn't realize how much is involved from a research perspective, from a science perspective, from a professional perspective. I actually even know a PhD from Harvard that was trained in snow and ice management. It's like it's quite unique
and incredibly important too.
Hugely important.
Incredibly important.
Can you imagine if our members couldn't do their work?
Yeah.
It's foundational. It's an emergency service, and it's also if we couldn't remove the snow, what would the economy do? Right?
Exactly. The economy. How would you get to the hospital?
Right.
How would a fire truck get to a situation?
That's right.
It's incredibly important. It needs to be recognized in that way and thought of in that way.
The other thing I think should be underscored is no one thinks of the snow and ice operator. Right? Like
right.
They don't. We take it for granted.
Yeah.
We take for granted that our roads are cleaned and our parking lots are cleaned, but they don't clean themselves.
No.
And it's the member who wakes up at 2 a.m. And keeps it safe, and they deserve a lot of appreciation, a lot of thanks, a lot of recognition. So I'm proud to be part of their team.
I think that's part of why it is such a really a sad situation that the legislation and the legal culture has changed to put it in such a bind.
That's
it
right.
just sort of emphasizes that.
That's right.
But really hoping that these measures that LO's taking part of it, and really what the members are doing to reach out to their members of parliament, provincial parliament, is going to make an impact.
Yeah.
And
So
change
do I.
this.
One thing that I was very impressed with. I don't know if impressed is the right word, but the so at that meeting at Congress, the one of the members got up and said, we should take all our trucks and go to Queen's Park and protest, right? And so I asked the audience, well, how many would do that? Every single hand went up. They wanted to go to Queen's Park and surround the park with snow plows.
Bring their equipment, come on down. I mean,
so
they
we still might have to do that, but at this point, the government's actually on our side.
Yeah.
So let's keep doing the politicking first.
For sure.
And if we need to raise awareness by shutting down Queen's Park, then so be it.
Yeah, cross that bridge. Thank you, Tony. I think this has been a pretty good overview of a pretty complex situation, a really serious situation.
Yeah.
We're optimistic. I can hear that in your voice, but it has been really hard. A lot of really hard situations with people struggling, and that's really unfortunate. But really trying to look at doing everything that LO can to make an impact.
Right.
So I appreciate you laying it all out there today.
Super.
Awesome.
Thank you, Scott.
And
And now our conversation with Garden Grove Landscaping President, David Lammers. Okay, David, thank you so much for joining us at Landscape Ontario. It's really a pleasure to have you here. If you could start off telling us a little bit about yourself and your business as well.
Happy to be here today, Scott. Appreciate you having me. Paul and I started Garden Grove about 30 years ago. We're coming into our 30th year in 2020. For the first 10 years, our business was very residential focused, which started to change 20 years ago. And that's where we really began to apply ourselves to the commercial market, the commercial sector, providing landscape services to the commercial property owners, commercial property managers. So we really learned over the last 20 years and been part of the snow industry as it's continued to progress and grow to where it is today. And so coming into our 30th year, we're quite excited, and we got the fire to keep going.
Congrats on 30 years. And how long have you been a member of Landscape Ontario?
Hey, great question. One that I'm really proud of. So we're coming into 25 years
Good for you.
of our membership here at LO too. So that's also exciting.
Fantastic.
As we've seen LO grow. And I'll never forget my first trade show, my first Congress at Hamilton Copps Coliseum. I felt like I was a rock star coming into a Landscape Ontario Congress at when it was over at Copps Coliseum. So quite a lot of memories there, Scott.
That's great. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you today is, we're hearing from so many members that are in the snow space that insurance liability issues, insurance costs have been, really rising dramatically. Is that something you've seen, you've heard about? What are your thoughts on that issue?
Where do I start? That is, you've hit a trigger. This is a trigger. We definitely are seeing a lot of change right now. As it relates to insurance and liability. There's other issues. It's interesting, Scott. I look back at the last 20 years into where we are today, and it's really in the last 10 years that we've seen a tremendous change. 20 years ago, we were contractors who were providing a service, and as any Canadian would in this industry, right, for clearing snow. And we've seen a tremendous change over the years as the industry has developed and grown, adapting to the needs and the changing societal needs, really. But that's why your question is such a trigger word right now. We never saw that as a trigger before as much as it is now based on how much society has changed. And so I'm looking forward to unpacking that a bit more with you here.
Sure. Yeah. Why do you think this is happening where insurance companies, the rates are really rising dramatically, like I said? What have you seen? Why do you think it's happening?
So we have a problem, and the problem is that our society has really raised the bar on expectations. I like to joke around and say it's a crime that it snows in Canada. Forgive me for saying that, but that's how it feels. We provided an honest service, and we still continue to do that, but what's happened is society has changed so much that the property owner wants to now put all the responsibility on someone. They're looking for someone to blame. That's also a problem in society today, right? Everyone's looking for someone to blame. And so as contractors, we've become that blame on the property for having the property in our care. And that is something that we have, I'm going to be honest, we've allowed this to happen.
Right.
It's been something that's been progressing over the years and getting worse and worse. Insurance companies used to just remind us to keep our documentation in place. But we were surprised when we really started seeing the first lawsuits coming in already a number of years ago when it started, and quite surprised by it because we thought, honestly, we've done everything we could have done. What more could we do?
Right.
And it came down to puddles that were freezing at night because it had rained and the next morning it froze. And right, it was all these little things. Yeah, but that puddle is because the asphalt's got a depression in it. Yet we were being held liable for that responsibility, for that puddle. And so it all comes down to due diligence then, right? And risk management. So we're hearing all these things now coming out more and more, right? On what we need to be doing to raise the bar as snow contractors.
Yeah. What about, I know before we started recording,
Yeah.
we were talking about the hold harmless clauses on that side. What do you do? What can the industry do to, not be held liable for everything
Right.
on a property?
Right. That's a great question, and one that the industry members, right, owners, business owners need to start sitting down with the customer, sit down with the property owner, the property manager, and discuss these matters, discuss these hold harmless clauses. Contractors, we need to stop signing contracts that have clauses in them, such as hold harmless clauses. The problem is we won't have any business if we don't sign these contracts.
Right.
So the problem is the laws need to change in Ontario in order for these property managers to stop putting out contracts, these legal contracts that contain all the clauses that bind our organizations to the issues associated with slip and fall due to winter weather.
Now, I guess that's it. If it's become the norm that the property manager can find a company that's going to sign the hold harmless. I guess if you refuse to, are we at a place now where it's hard to get that work? I guess. Would you say?
I would say that this is the change that we're seeing in the industry. We're seeing companies go from being a day-to-day or a winter added service only to treating snow as their primary business. That is one thing that we're doing in our organization, is treating snow like it's a first priority, and that it is a first priority. Snow is an urgent business. It's an emergency response business.
Right.
It's a community service. It's one of these essential services that we're the first responders. We really are. And I was talking with a contractor this morning. I said, it's harder and harder for us to be in this industry. We need to have a real survival mentality. And we need to be able to be strong to address the issues as well as the events that we deal with in our snow businesses. I think, Scott, the big thing is that we've seen a change of professionalism. So there are contractors out there who will sign these contracts, that they will take on the liability. But the problem is the insurance companies are now no longer going to insure these companies that keep taking on that liability. Mm-hmm. We believe that there needs to be a shared liability. We believe that as we continue to move forward as a professional snow ice industry, that we will partner with our customers, partner with our contracts, and have fair clauses. Mm-hmm. Right? We need to be responsible for the things that we do. We got to take ownership of the right and the wrong. And if we haven't done something that we were contracted to do, that's on us. But if we're being sued for someone that's climbing over a snow pile, to move from one side of the parking lot to the other, we should not be held liable for these frivolous lawsuits. Yeah. For people that are deciding to do these things that the lawyers are now preying on in Ontario, the same way that we're seeing with our friends in the U.S.
Yeah, I was speaking with a couple different people on this topic. One was MPP Norm Mills, who is involved in the Bill 118 that is looking at sort of standardizing sort of the statute of limitations for when a slip and fall claim can be made. And by standardize, I mean it's 10 days for municipalities. It's been 2 years for everybody else. He's looking at legislation that would make it 10 days for everybody. And I was also talking to some folks in the insurance industry, and they talked about that litigious culture that seems to have really been growing in Southern Ontario in Canada. Well, we'll talk about our jurisdiction here in Southern Ontario. Is that something you've seen as well? What are your thoughts on, I guess you did allude to it a little bit, on just the fact that there is so many slip and fall lawsuits for things that common sense wouldn't think are reasonable. Right.
Like wear boots in the winter, right?
And just because, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that MPP Norm Mills said that I found very candid and sort of striking and maybe obvious, he said, just because you've fallen, which is unfortunate, just because you've fallen, it doesn't mean it's the result of someone else's wrongdoing.
Right.
That seems common sense, but for some reason we've moved away from it, I guess.
That's right.
As a culture, anyways.
That's right. It's not an indicator of negligence, right?
Yeah.
Correct. And I think that that's the point of this Bill 118 that's being put forward, which is a very important move for the statute of limitations to be reduced from 2 years to 10 days. For someone in the province right now to be able to go back, in fact, this is what they hope for. They hope that by the time that 2 years is almost nearly passed, The contractor will no longer have his information. They will no longer have the data, right? The evidence, right? And to be able to stand their ground. And that's not true for the professional companies out there. We have the most technology and the most information available to us now than ever before. So can we get by in 2 years? Absolutely. But should we? No. You know what? It's not reasonable. Agreed. And this is a big move right now. It doesn't mean that they can't file. It means that you're put on notice, right? It doesn't eliminate someone from being. It's just that if something happened, let it be legit, right? Let it be something like real that should be discovered, right? And they have 10 days to do it. And it's a very fair bill.
And especially for the contractor or the property manager to make sure that they have, the proper documentation and that it's just to make sure that they have a fair chance to present the facts of,
That's right.
of what happened. So, yeah, it's really important. I know, like I said, spoke to Norm Mills recently, and he stressed that, he wants, members of LO, to everybody really that feels strongly about this issue to, reach out to your MPP. Let them know that this is important to you. So hopefully our listeners in our community are doing that. I know we've been putting that message out there.
Well, and we connected with our local MPs and MPPs as well, and on both fronts, federally but also provincially, so that they understand the issues. Because what's happening here in the province is it's not happening in the other provinces the same way. We're seeing this issue in Ontario. In Quebec, they understand winter; they know what to expect, right? And most of the rest of the country is the same way. I think the big thing here is that we need to continue to work together as an industry, and I'm really glad that this Bill 118 has been put out. All members of Landscape Ontario should connect with their local elected members and notify them of this opportunity to have this bill passed.
So you mentioned, or at least alluded to the fact that the snow industry, the snow profession, it's really come a long way.
Yeah. Can
you talk about how it's changed over your career and how it's the bar's really been raised, the professionalism and some of the things you do to ensure success for your business and your clients?
Wow,
That was big. Yes,
that's awesome. I love that. I think if I can just speak to people, process, right,
Please.
And even sales, but when we look at just the equipment alone, so I'll speak to process first. The availability, the innovation, the progression of products that are available mechanically to the industry is by far at an all-time high. We have the most equipment ever and technology ever available to us in the history of the industry. And the effectiveness of these tools is unbelievable. The way that we can plow snow now, the way that we can clean up a parking lot, the way that we can deal with walkways and de-icing through salt, rock, treatment applications, liquid treatment applications, the technology available for tracking and geofencing properties and knowing when our people have been there, the video, the photo, like everything that's available is by far at an all-time high. It's fascinating what we've seen in the industry. And as a result, of course, our people now have tools and resources and information that they can lead with. They're able to have successful means by which they can be professional snow contractors now. And that's what we're seeing is a raised level of professionalism all around. So now anyone that's entering the snow industry can truly see this as a career. The equipment, right? The all of the available resources, the technology, what all makes up the end service for our client. So that when we do their properties and map their sites out and provide engineered mapping and all of the pre-season, post-season inspections and video footage and right? I remember when I would take pictures and I'd have to print them at, Shoppers Drug Mart or something and wait for the photos to come back, and pay $25 or whatever it was. Yeah. We don't have that anymore. And so at the snap of the finger right now, we have information available. Our clients could be in Chicago and they know that their sites are cleared here in Toronto. And that is awesome. So we've seen this tremendous shift. Yet at the same time, again, and I'll come back to this, we have the most issues facing our industry than ever before.
It's ironic. The job's being done better than ever.
Right.
But the issues on the liability front are probably worse than ever.
And that's why I think we're at a pivotal moment. I would say it's a crisis moment.
Yeah.
I think we're at a crisis moment. I'm actually not afraid to call it that.
Yeah.
This is we're seeing a mega change right now, and it's not just in Ontario. This is in the U.S. It's been going on in the U.S. already. I do a lot of networking in the U.S. We're seeing these issues now in a very big way here. It's a crisis.
So what do you? It is a fairly complex issue. There's some moving parts to it. But what are some of the things you'd like to see? How do we start moving as a profession in the right direction to overcome this crisis?
So I always say when I got one finger pointing out, there's three pointing back at me. Right. So I always say, listen, what do I need to do first? Because I got my finger pointing at change, but there's three pointing back at me. So as an industry, what do we need to continue to do to raise the bar? So I'm gonna just speak to certification and training.
Sure.
So as we continue now to raise the bar, what are the three fingers pointing back? It's about safety. We need to improve safety within our organizations. If we don't treat safety first in our own companies, how can we expect our client properties to be safe, right? So we need to take on a safety mindset. We need to take on a training mindset. It's really, really important. It's paramount that we spend more effort in training, safety and training than ever before. We need to give our people the tools that they need to be successful, right? You hear a lot about train to retain, right? We want to make sure that we're developing people and growing them. And that's my third thing, which my third finger pointing back at me is developing careers, right? Developing that professional mindset, right? That growth mindset. We need to have a growth mindset in the industry right now. When crisis hits, right? It's a trial. What are we going to do to overcome that trial? Yes, the finger pointing forward is about liability change, right? It's about hold harmless agreements being changed. It's about liability change, right? Or legislative change.
Yep.
You know, it's about better material procurement maybe for salt, right? We've been facing issues in the industry relating to salt and salt procurement. So it's easy to point the finger forward, but what are we doing first to change at the same time? Yeah. And so I think these things have to happen in tandem so that when we go forward to legislation, whatever that looks like, listen, I mean, we're using more salt than ever before. I talk about salt procurement. Part of the problem is, again, it comes back to legislative change. I love what LO is doing right now with the freshwater roundtable. We hear of some of that happening from I know the snow sector is involved in that. We need to continue to reduce the chlorides that are going into the Great Lakes. We need to stop using salt the way we're using it. Right. And this is going to result through liability change. So it is paramount that we continue to reduce salt consumption by addressing the liability issue.
Right. It's connected.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go there a little bit and some of the things you've seen on that salt front. I know you've been quite involved in that issue. Could you talk a little bit about where we're at today and in terms of salt shortages and so forth?
So there's a lot of salt that gets used in North America. Mm-hmm. I forget the tonnage right now. It's in the millions of tons every winter. We have a lot of really good quality domestic mines, and the issues facing the industry are not just liability, but we've also seen a change in the weather, right? We've seen more extreme weather conditions. We're seeing a lot more freeze-thaw cycles. We're seeing a lot more frequency of events, right? Last February was, again, another month of solid ice events. So combine that, the weather issue with the liability issue, and then add in a domestic supply issue where the mines can't keep up. Mm-hmm. Not only keep up with production, but also they have their own issues, right? We've heard of the issues that have come from the domestic mines here. These are not helpful issues. Right. And we understand business challenges. We all face them, right? Yep. But I think we've seen a lot of people taking matters into their own hands. We are one of those companies who decided to do that and start doing our own procurement, right. And help anyone we could along the way that wanted to be part of our procurement process. The goal of that being to guarantee supply and to stabilize the price. When we look at domestic supply, I was chatting with a fellow contractor recently, and we both said, it just feels like when someone's not telling you the truth, then you assume that there's a lie. Yeah. And so we're all sitting here as contractors wondering what is the truth, because right now we're not even hearing anything. Yeah. And so we need to start to get some answers, and hopefully we're going to hear that. I don't know what the process is for that. But we're definitely needing to see more stability in salt procurement for sure.
Yeah, because even if usage is limited, if we're able to get to a point where we're able to use less, we're still going to need salt. It's still an incredibly important tool.
That's right.
Yeah.
They've been importing for years in the Eastern Seaboard. Of course, that's how they do salt on the East Coast. The Midwest has been bringing it up to Mississippi, right? But they've had issues with the flooding. And so, of course, the costs, right, of bringing in internationally is so much more than what we are used to paying domestically. And again, I mean, this is all part of the change. This is all part of the issues facing the snow and ice industry. I was thinking the other day, if we didn't have to spend time procuring salt, wouldn't that be nice? If we didn't have to spend time dealing with all these liability and these slip and fall issues, right? Where would we put our time? And maybe we wouldn't, put it where it needs to be. But I believe truly that if we can control our procurement, right, and get more stability in salt procurement and more stability over the liability issues, we can focus more on our people. Yeah. We can focus more on our clients, right? We can focus more on our businesses, and we can continue to raise the bar. I'm really excited about that.
It's not as if it wasn't a challenging business as it was,
right,
as it was with seasonality to this part of the business, certainly, and not knowing when a snow, not being able to plan 6 months out on when a snow event's going to happen. But you throw in these other challenges, and like you said, you have to have that survival mentality.
Yeah.
But yet there's companies like Garden Grove that are thriving and having so much success and doing such great work. What are you doing, or how is that? How do you overcome these challenges? What are some of the things that you're doing to thrive in this industry?
Well, I'll first start by saying that I feel like we are the least of the greatest of these. There are so many companies that we admire that are so much farther ahead than we are, and so thank you for that. But at the same time, just truly humbled by the members even in our own province that we admire and that we continue to look to, right, as the leaders in this industry. I believe that in order for us to grow, we need to know, right? I think it's really important that knowledge goes first, right? And anyone that wants to grow. And so what our mantra is to just continue to learn. So we want to be a learning organization. And what do we need to keep learning? Where do we need to keep improving? And so our focus has been, number one, we are a snow company, right? We're a grounds management snow company. But because of the nature of snow being so critical, I mean, don't get me wrong, the green industry is critical. Mm-hmm. And everything we do there is critical, but we can do sometimes something the next day, right? Or it can happen that afternoon. With the snow industry, it has to happen that moment. And there is when the snow hit on November 11, we hadn't seen a snow event like that in 83 years. Wow. Yeah. And in the province, and actually for quite a bit of the Midwest too, and the South. And when that hit, there is no wiggle room for error. So we are saying we're a snow first company. And so all of our systems, processes, training, sales, procurement, planning, it all comes back to that. I was speaking with a colleague in the U.S. the other day. He said, I really feel like I've got it wrong. I said, what's that? He said, I've been focused so much on my landscape side of my business. He says, I've been putting first priority on that. But he goes, but every fall I'm in trouble when the winter comes around. And he's running a multi-million-dollar snow business. Mm-hmm. And I said, our challenge has been the same challenge, and that's why we're making snow first. Snow first, everything second, everything else second from there.
What keeps you going? What excites you? What makes you wanna overcome all these challenges to succeed with the business?
I'm smiling right now. So for those of you who can't see me, I'm smiling. It's that's a good question, right? Because when you're beaten up, right, how do you keep getting up, right? When you're down, you got to get up. I'll be honest with you. Some mornings I put my feet down on the floor when I get out of bed, and I just remind myself that there's someone who's dealing with something that's a bigger issue than I have, mm-hmm. right? I always say I'm able to do right now what I need to do because someone's got something worse than I do. And I don't know what it is, but my problems are nowhere near as big as someone else's problem. And I'll tell you right now, I'm kind of getting emotional actually, because it's so easy for us to get so focused on ourselves and the issues, and we kind of like the blinders on, right? Like horse racing, and the line, our eyes are on the pavement, and we're following the line. But there's a lot going on that we're passing. And so Scott, for me, it's perspective. It's all perspective. It's seeing past the issues, right? Knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And sometimes I say even it's like getting on an airplane, right? And seeing the issues from 40,000 feet. It totally changes the perspective. Yeah.
Just as a last thing, I'd love to talk to you just briefly about some of the associations. Obviously, here this is the Landscape Ontario podcast, and you've been quite active with our association. I know you're active with SIMA as well, and I think some others. Could you talk about why that's important to you, and some of the things you're hope to be involved with, hope to be seeing with associations in the future?
Well, yeah, no, I'll tell you, the industry associations that we have, not only here in the province, I'll start there first with Landscape Ontario. This is an industry association that is like none other. And it's been wonderful to see over the years how Landscape Ontario has continued to progress as that professional association for the industry. The amount of networking, sharing, opportunities for learning, growing, being inspired. This industry is unbelievable. We are one of the most beautiful and dynamic and fruitful and exciting industries. And so we just have so much respect for Landscape Ontario, the board over the years, Tony and his work. It's just been phenomenal. We made a decision as an organization 6 or 7 years ago to get outside the province. Make sure that we were learning here, but also to start learning elsewhere.
Sure.
And when we launched our first trip to the U.S. and connected with SIMA, that for us was a big eye opener. Now, primarily because of our focus moving into snow, right? So you got to choose where you go based on where you want to grow. And we just immediately saw a family of an inside of an industry. It was a family inside of an industry. And it was really cool to see the commitment to professionalism, knowing your numbers, tracking what you're doing, comparing, analyzing, right? Year over year analysis. Well, what market are you in? How much snow do you get? Do you guys plow by the inch or do you do by seasonal? Like the questions, there was a grilling that was going on. We were being grilled. And it was awesome because we didn't have all our answers. We didn't know. And yet we really enjoyed the numbers. And a lot of our U.S. friends, and we see that a lot, it's a, hey, show us the numbers. And so we really learned quickly that this business of being in the snow business is about A, networking, B, learning in the networking, and C, knowing our numbers and knowing and having our own information that we could also start sharing. It was very much a give and take. We found very quickly that by immersing ourselves into the snow business family in the U.S., that it was very much a sharing time, sharing and caring. We developed a lot of really key relationships that to this day are ones that are just like they're almost like brothers, and it's really special to be able to go away from home and be at the trade shows or the conferences. So SIMA has been amazing. We have just absolutely seen tremendous fruit from being at SIMA. And getting to know all of our friends through SIMA and the SIMA team itself. The other association that exists in the U.S. is the ASCA, the Accredited Snow Contractors Association. So we immersed ourselves in that group as well, which we found out very quickly they're two different groups, two different associations. There's some cross relationship, but they're both existing for different purposes. SIMA's there for the contractor through and through all around, right? Training resources, tools, information, and the networking power that's there. But then we say, but we look over to our friends in the ASCA and we see a group of a different level of professionals, larger companies that are committed to getting the job done in different ways. as it relates to government affairs and legislative change, and what are the standards within our organizations that we need to adopt. And so we've seen a lot of development, both with SIMA and the ASCA, with ANSI standards, with the American National Standards Institute, getting these accredited standards that we can then here in Ontario adopt for the snow and ice industry. And I know that the sector group's been working as well with that, and the best practices guidelines that have been put together for the snow and ice industry. And so when we answer this question, it's all about training and certification. So what is the certification process that we can go through? And so with SIMA, there's an amazing CSP and ASM program. And with ASCA, there's the awesome ASCA level 1, 2, and 3 program for accreditation. And so what are the certifications, again, available to our people for learning? And so we want to keep raising the bar. That's why we went to the US. We found that getting outside of the box, that'll give us the perspective looking back home again for what we need to do to change.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it all comes back to, being employee focused, as you mentioned before, with the training and certification, and improving, management as well as right down to everybody in the company. And it makes such a big difference for your clients in the end, and just a win-win for everybody. I think maybe we'll leave it there. I think we touched on, there is so many topics in the snow business that we could touch on. I think we'll leave it there. I really appreciate you coming in and being so open and chatting about these topics. As you say, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of challenges, but there's just as many opportunities. It's an amazing business to be in.
Agreed.
And I just am so grateful that you came in and shared some of your thoughts on these topics.
It was my pleasure.
Very good. Thanks, David.